Jose Mourinho is no ordinary manager, and this is no ordinary story. On one hand, this is one of the most inspiring stories that you'll ever listen to. How this novice translator rose to the very top of the footballing world in just under a decade. But there's also a very dark side to this story. How a manager manipulates, lies, and cheats to get his way to the very top. And despite all of this controversy, millions of fans across the world still consider him the GOAT manager. Felix Mourinho was a goalkeeper for Belenenses. Not well-classed, but very hard-working. His loyalty to the club allowed him to adopt the coaching role towards the end of his career. As a native of Setúbal, no one expected him to be coaching any club, let alone a professional club at his age, except for one person, Jose Mourinho. He was his biggest fan, always showing up to training sessions just to get a glimpse of his father with the first team players. Felix was decent, but overall an unremarkable coach, with showing him get fired from his coaching job and left a scar on his young son. I was only 9 or 10 when I saw my father get sacked on Christmas Day. This experience gave Jose all of the knowledge he needed to prepare him for the harshness of a football career. One day you're on top of the world, and the next day you can't even buy your children a gift on Christmas Day. Of course, this traumatizing event didn't scare Jose. It actually gave him more motivation to keep on going. He wanted to avenge his father and become a legend in the footballing world. And he chased his father's dream for a long time. Just like his father, Mourinho Jr. joined Real Ave as well, but only as a reserve player. See, Jose was never actually that good as a footballer. Even though his father was the coach, Mourinho was banished to reserve football and made 0 pro appearances for Real Ave. He looked at his situation and he knew he wasn't good enough. There was no way he could follow in his father's footsteps and become a Portugal international. So after 5 years of his professional journey, Mourinho decided to hang up his boots. But he had a plan. Jose thought like this: if I started my managerial journey now, then I will be levels ahead of everyone else by the time I'm 30 years old. He had to start from the bottom again, but we all know how much Mourinho loves the underdog story. So he dropped out of business school on his first day and immediately started studying sports science. Jose is far from humble. We know this. But back then, he realized that the only way that he would succeed is if he took baby steps. From ball boy to janitor to dishwasher, any job at a football club he can find, he would apply for. But the job he ended up landing was a shock, even to his father. It was 1992 and the great Sir Bobby Robson had moved to Portugal to continue his glorious career. He had a UEFA Cup and 30 years of experience under his belt. He was ready to conquer Portugal, but there was only one problem. He couldn't speak the language. This is where Jose Mourinho came in. He saw this issue and offered his services. He knew that he had no chance of becoming a coach at the time, so he took the opportunity with both hands. Mourinho was tasked with translating tactics and telling Robson what the players were saying behind his back. It was a brilliant situation to be in, as he used this time to learn everything he could about football tactics. He was learning so much that he was in line for a promotion after just a few years. After Sir Bobby accepted a move to Porto in 1994, he was in desperate need of a tactical report on his players. Mourinho saw this as an opportunity, a chance to show the boss his football knowledge. So he handed in his own tactical report and shocked the great Sir Bobby Robson. He'd come back and handed me a dossier that was absolutely first class. I mean first class. As good as anything that I had ever seen. Here he was in his early 30s, never been a player, never a coach to speak of either, giving me reports as good as I've ever gotten. After this, Sir Bobby handed him the assistant job, and this was the best decision he made in his career. They had won 2 league titles, 3 Super Cups, 1 Portuguese Cup, and reached the semi-final of the Champions League. With all of this success in Portugal, it was only a matter of time until a big Spanish club started knocking. They ended up saying goodbye to Porto after 2 great seasons and rocked up on the shores of Catalonia. But Barcelona hated the thought of Mourinho. His translator/assistant role confused everyone, and they wanted to fire him as soon as possible. However, Robson insisted on keeping Mourinho as his assistant. Thus, Mourinho was now a part of Barcelona history. From dropping out of business school, he was now coaching the likes of Ronaldo, Luis Figo, Laurent Blanc, and Pep Guardiola. Sir Bobby was given the sack after only 1 year. Even after delivering a cup treble, Mourinho was allowed to stay at Barcelona though, now given a lesser role as an opponent analysis. The Barcelona board never truly respected Jose, and Mourinho knew this. They looked at him as Bobby's translator, never as a football coach. This put a seed in Mourinho's mind. He had to prove them wrong, but not yet. He knew that he had to conquer Europe first. The start of a new millennium meant a new beginning for Jose. He was given the interim manager role at Benfica after the manager was fired only 2 months into the season. This was new to Mourinho. He was finally the boss, and he was in love with it. Tactics, interviews, press conferences, this was the life that he had envisioned a decade ago, but it didn't last. His dream had died as quickly as it sprung to life. After 9 games, which included a 3-0 win over the historic rival Sporting, Benfica decided he wasn't the right man for the job. It didn't matter what he did, he was always the translator. Benfica had gotten a new president and decided that Mourinho wasn't the correct profile needed. They decided that a former player fit their vision better. Jose begged and pleaded for a chance of redemption, but his words fell on deaf ears. The president had made his decision, a decision that he would soon regret for the rest of his life. He spent the winter and spring of 2001 studying and waiting for an opportunity, waiting for a chance, just one chance. In July 2001, União de Lera took a gamble on a young Mourinho. This gamble paid off very quickly. Mourinho quickly implemented his philosophies to a young team and took them to the lucky heights of 5th place, only 6 points off of Champions League spots, and more importantly, only 6 points off of Benfica in 2nd place. It was now December, and Mourinho was considered one of the best young managers in Portugal, so naturally big clubs started to knock. He didn't want to leave União, as this was the first club to truly believe in him, but he knew if he weren't to truly embarrass Benfica, then the best way would be through the rivals. However, this wasn't the Porto that you know today. Now 5 months into the season, the Dragons were in complete turmoil, languishing in 7th place, far away from the rivals Benfica and Sporting. They needed a savior, and the fans saw Mourinho as just that. He guided them to a respectable third place finish and secure European football. But this was only the start. The media was still on his back, labeling him O Tradutor, the translator. It was an ongoing joke in Portugal at the time. How will Porto win anything with this young, inexperienced coach at the helm? His second season started like a ball of fire though, with Porto racing away to a 6-point lead by October. It took them 7 months to lose their first league game, but by that time, the league was already almost won. Porto won the quadruple that year: Primeira Liga, Taça de Portugal, Supertaça, and the Europa League. That summer was an interesting one, as the whole of Europe were now after this Portuguese wonder manager. He had that bit of class and hint of arrogance that had every fan intrigued by his next move. He decided to stay at Porto though because he hadn't completed his goal yet. See, Benfica fans still had the jury out for Mourinho. In their mind, anyone could win the Portuguese league. Their pride and joy was the Champions League. Porto had only won it once in their history, whilst Benfica had won it twice. This was the only way that Mourinho could truly topple Benfica, win the Champions League, and he took this as a challenge. In the next season, everything stayed the same in the league. Early 6-point lead and 0 losses until April this time. But the fans only had eyes on one competition. They had hope, but they was against the best team in the world at the time. The round of 16 of the Champions League was like a movie. The legendary Sir Alex Ferguson versus the prodigy Jose Mourinho. No one thought that Porto had a chance, but they shocked the world and knocked the Red Devils out of the Champions League. The rim was one day, but the celebration is what got everybody talking about Mourinho. After Costinha had scored a last-minute winner, Mourinho ran down the touchline and celebrated with his players like he was one of their teammates. This was not normal. Many English pundits took this as disrespectful, but this made the world fall in love with Mourinho just a little bit more. May 26, 2004. Porto finally had the chance to lift this glorious competition again. They could not make a mistake, and they didn't. Porto walked all over Monaco and embarrassed them 3-0 in the final. The Portuguese media had finally put some respect on his name, but it was time for a new journey. A young Russian billionaire had been flirting with him for months, and the new project in London was starting to look a bit enticing.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit arrogant. We have a top manager. I'm European champion. I think I'm a special one.
Was he arrogant? Yes, but who wouldn't be? He was a retired average footballer who worked his way from being a translator all the way to becoming the European champion. This was a fairy tale story, and this was the way that the media saw it as well. Every word he said, every phrase he uttered became folklore for the Chelsea faithful. It's probably really hard to comprehend, but Chelsea at the time were not a massive club. They hadn't won a league title in 50 years and had only been to the Champions League a minimal lot of times. The fans were screaming out for a saviour, and here they had finally found their man. The media loved his antics, but he still had his doubters. Everyone knew he could perform in Portugal, but Portugal was not the Premier League. He was now in the best league in the world. But what was he going to do? What else? He treated the Premier League like a walk in the park, breaking countless records and winning the league title in his first season against Sir Alex Ferguson. The Chelsea faithful actually got their first bit of Mourinho antics in the League Cup win against Liverpool. He shushed the Liverpool crowd after they abused him all game. However, the best part of the season came again in the Champions League, but for a different reason this time. See, Mourinho was suspended for the Champions League quarter-final game against Bayern Munich, so he was banned from coming into the stadium. Mourinho thought that he could work around this rule, so he came up with an interesting plan. He decided to hide inside the Chelsea dressing room for 7 hours before kickoff to speak to his players. This plan had one flaw though. Once the players went to go play, UEFA will search around all of the dressing rooms. Jose had actually thought of a workaround though. He jumped into the nearest laundry bin and asked the staff to take him out of the dressing room. It didn't work in the end as he was suspended for 2 more games and Chelsea were knocked out, but at least we knew he was creative. In his second season with Chelsea, there were less fireworks, more efficiency. They were like a well-oiled machine. Even though they were against the legendary Manchester United side, it felt like Chelsea were always in control of the title, smashing Manchester United 3-0 en route to the 3rd league title in their history. Jose Mourinho signed a 4-year contract until 2010 and it looked like nothing could go wrong in London. But it did. After an average 3rd season with only a League Cup and FA Cup to show for it, Roman Abramovich was on edge. He wanted Chelsea to win the league title every year. And he made this clear to Mourinho. So after a lackluster start to his 4th season, Mourinho was sacked by Chelsea. After his success in England, Mourinho only had one vision. This vision saw him lifting the La Liga title at Barcelona. Yes, Barcelona. Mourinho saw his success as a perfect segue to get him back in the Catalan club, now as the boss. The meetings with the board went well. They loved his confidence and his footballing vision. But one person refused to make him the manager. Johan Cruyff said that Mourinho does not represent Barcelona and that the job should go to a novice coach, Pep Guardiola. The rivalry started from that day. Mourinho knew who his next victim had to be. In his first season with the club, Mourinho won the double rather comfortably, with the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Patrick Vieira. But the situation was similar to the one at Porto, Champions League or bust. See, Inter fans had to see their historic rivals transform into a European royalty over the past decade. They were desperate for European success, so Mourinho looked at his side and diagnosed the problem. His top goal scorer was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He felt that if he got a different striker in like Samuel Eto'o to lead his line, then European glory was almost guaranteed. So he ran against the wishes of every single Inter fan and replaced Zlatan Ibrahimovic with Samuel Eto'o. But with Eto'o as the main man, they won everything. In Italy, the league title was wrapped up by May. The Coppa Italia was won against Roma, but the fans were not satisfied. Not yet. There was still a Champions League semi-final to play against FC Barcelona, the best team in the world at the time. Pep versus Jose. This was the first time we saw this historic matchup, and it did not disappoint. Florentino Perez gave Mourinho a call and handed him one request. He needed to stop Barcelona's dominance. During Mourinho's time in Italy, Pep Guardiola had established himself as the best coach in Spain and had arguably built the best team in the history of the sport. Perez knew that the only way he could beat this super team was through Cristiano Ronaldo and Jose Mourinho. Mourinho took this opportunity with open hands. Barcelona had disrespected him one too many times. He was ready for revenge. From day one, Mourinho could not keep Pep's name out of his mouth. Every interview and every press conference was about Pep Guardiola. This was an intentional tactic. Mourinho knew that Pep was probably a bit better than him tactically, so he fought him in a different way, psychologically. Mourinho was looking to wear down Pep and turn football into a psychological war. He even said that he would be ashamed to win the Champions League in the same way Pep did in 2009. But this tactic didn't work at first, as Barcelona had another dominant season in 2011 and won the league and Champions League. The media started to write about Jose. He speaks a lot, but he hasn't been backing up his talk. Is this really the man to stop Barcelona's dominance? Mourinho's back was against the wall again. He felt like he had to perform in the second season or he will be sacked. This season was more intense than ever. It felt like Mourinho just wanted it more than everyone else. Every loss felt like the world was collapsing in on him. Like when Real Madrid lost 4-3 on aggregate to Barcelona in 2012, he went on a passionate rant attacking every single referee in the stadium and then took it one step further and waited in the car park next to the referee's car to confront him. He told the ref, "What an artist you are, the way you like to screw up professionals." The media thought that he had lost his head and lost the battle with Pep Guardiola, but it was quite the opposite. Mourinho's side went on to lift the Spanish title that season, and Mourinho finally got his revenge. But the sweeter part was yet to come. Pep Guardiola decided to step down from the manager role at Barcelona to clear his head. Fans often speculate that Mourinho was the true reason for the sabbatical. Even though Mourinho had felt like he won the war with Pep, he wasn't quite finished at Real Madrid. He stayed for another season. However, this season just didn't feel the same. He had a fractured relationship with fan favorites Iker Casillas and Sergio Ramos, and even told the media that Cristiano Ronaldo feels like he knows everything and maybe the coach can't improve him anymore. This was hard for both Mourinho and the fans, as they felt that he was finally the man to provide them La Decima. But every good thing must come to an end one day. And after losing to Atletico Madrid in the Copa del Rey final in 2013, Jose Mourinho left the troubled mutual consent. As his time at Real Madrid was coming to a close, there was one narrative that just kept on popping up in the media. Was Jose Mourinho past his best? He was a great underdog in Portugal, the special one in England, and was considered at his peak in Italy and Spain. But what was next for Jose? He quickly vanquished all those rumors by re-signing the Chelsea in July 2013. Some say that this was the period that he lost the sparkle in his eye, as he was looked at as this old, bitter man instead of the young, buccaneering maverick that he was before. He was still up to his crazy antics, but they weren't quite the same. He reminded the world of the old Mourinho when he called Arsene Wenger the specialist in failure, and then beat him 6-0 in his 1,000th game for Arsenal. But this was sandwiched in with a lot of moments that rubbed the fans the wrong way, like the time he publicly attacked the Chelsea physio for simply doing her job, which made fans question Jose for the very first time. He called Eva Carneiro a daughter of a... and then acted like he did nothing wrong. It just wasn't the same. Even though he had won the title in the second season, it felt like Mourinho had changed, and not for the better. He had Chelsea languishing down in 17th position in late 2016, and then he was let go again by Roman Abramovich. After getting sacked by Chelsea, he became a bit of a journeyman. A quite successful journeyman, but a journeyman nonetheless. He went to Manchester United and won 3 trophies in 3 years, but the fans never truly warmed up to him due to his connections with Chelsea. It appeared that it was no longer Mourinho and his club against the world. It was now Mourinho against the world. Instead of protecting his players in the press, he would throw them under the bus. The best example of this was a famous interview trip in 2018 after being knocked out by Sevilla in the Champions League.
United players that left the club last season, see where they play, how they play, if they play.
Now, was he wrong? Probably not, but at the time, this press conference left a sour taste in the mouths of Manchester United fans. He was statistically the second best manager in United's modern history, and people still called him a flop. he just didn't have the same aura about him. He moved on from Manchester United in 2018 and signed with Tottenham and then Roma, where he led Roma to the first European trophy at the modern era, becoming the first manager to win all 3 European competitions. Now he has embarked on a new journey in Turkey, and I just know he will be very successful. It doesn't matter what anyone says about Mourinho, it is clear that he is one of the greatest managers to ever grace the beautiful game. And if you want to hear the story about one of the best football players to ever grace the beautiful game, watch this video about the world-hating Cristiano Ronaldo. Thank you for watching, never stop thinking, and stay mindful, family.